तो जो आज हमारी प्रेजेंटेशन है उसमें जो नेक्स्ट प्रेजेंटर हैं हमारे शर्मिष्ठा एंड दीक्षिका, वेरी वेलकम बेटा। एंड इनका जो टॉपिक है बेटा वो है बायो इनऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री। ओके बेटा, नाउ शर्मिष्ठा एंड दीक्षिका प्लीज प्रोसीड विद योर प्रेजेंटेशन बेटा।
Good morning. Today, I, Sharmistha, and my friend Dikshika are sharing this platform for a presentation on bioinorganic chemistry.
We performed various experiments in our chemistry labs, but do you know that somewhat similar kind of reactions occur in our body as well? To carry out life processes, to sustain life.
And if we talk about other animals and plants, their cells also serve as flasks for various reactions, various life sustaining reactions. In fact, as per some of the evolution theories, formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution. First form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecules, and these organic molecules were formed from inorganic constituents. Further, if we talk of examples, there is a long list of chemical compounds and chemical reactions like chloroplast in plant cells contains chlorophyll, which is a magnesium complex. RBCs, also called erythrocytes, contains hemoglobin, which is a iron complex. And talking of chemical reactions, transport of carbon dioxide from cells to lung occurs mainly in bicarbonate form, which is formed by reaction of carbon dioxide and water in the presence of zinc containing enzyme called carbon anhydrase. This is a chemical reaction. And if we talk of nitrogen cycle, nitrogen fixation, that nitrogen present in soil is taken by plants in nitrate form, which is produced by successive oxidation reactions.
So here is a table showing proportions of various elements present in earth crust, ocean and mammals.
So we can see that there is a vast role of chemistry in living organisms. So, and for today, our focus is precisely on role of inorganic chemistry in biology, that is bioinorganic chemistry.
Now the question arises, what is bioinorganic chemistry? Bioinorganic chemistry relates inorganic chemistry with life processes. It is concerned with the role of metal ion in the normal growth and functioning of biological processes. Metal ions can have structural or catalytic roles in our bodies. In brief, we can say bioinorganic chemistry highlights the role of metal ions in biology.
Elements can be classified as essential, non-essential, and toxic elements. Essential elements are necessary to carry out life processes. Some of them are required in higher concentrations, for example, oxygen, carbon, sodium, magnesium, and are called bulk elements, while the others are required in just minute quantities called trace elements, and examples are iron, copper, zinc, etc. Non-essential elements are not as necessary. If they are absent, natural functioning of biological systems is not much disturbed. For example, aluminium, strontium, barium. And if we talk of toxic elements, their intake can prove to be fatal for a person or for any organism. Example, cadmium, lead, mercury.
Around 30 elements have been recognized as essential and indispensable to life. Essential elements are needed for the growth and normal functions of the plants and animals. Their absence results in severe malfunctioning of the living organisms. The deficiency or excess of metal ions causes disorder which leads to various diseases. Some of the bulk elements are needed for structural purposes while the rest are used as minerals. In the absence of essential elements, the organism can neither grow nor complete its full life cycle.
Now we will discuss about some of the essential bulk elements present in our body. Firstly, talking of sodium and potassium. Both of them are really essential for life processes. We need about at least 1 gram of sodium per day in our diet and about 3.5 milligram of potassium per day. Here are some pictures of sodium and potassium rich food.
Now we will discuss sodium potassium pump. Cells pump out sodium ions outside the cytoplasm, whereas potassium ions inside the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a semi-fluid between the nuclear membrane and the cell membrane. This ion transport involves active expulsion of sodium ions and active intake of potassium ions. Difference in the concentration of two ions produces an electric potential across the cell membrane important for neuron functioning. This ion transport requires energy obtained by ATP hydrolysis.
This animation depicts working of sodium-potassium pump. Movement of sodium and potassium ions occurs across the cell membrane, that is, the outer boundary of the cell. Cell membrane is composed of lipid bilayer and proteins. So this movement of polar molecules, that is sodium and potassium are polar molecules here, occurs through carrier protein, that is this purple colored in the figure. Since it partially buried in the membrane, since it is partially buried in the membrane, it is also known as integral protein. Sodium binds to this protein and using adenosine triphosphate, that is ATP, as energy, moves to the extracellular fluid, extracellular space, whereas potassium ion moves inside the cytoplasm of the cell. Cytoplasm is nothing, it is just a fluid matrix filled inside the cell. For every 3 sodium ions pumped out, 2 potassium ions are moving inside the cell. Since this process requires energy derived from ATP, it is an active process.
Moving on to calcium and magnesium. Both calcium and magnesium are important for biological systems. We require at least 1 gram of calcium per day and 400 milligram of magnesium per day in our diet. Some of the examples of calcium and magnesium rich foods can be seen.
Now discussing about biological role of calcium and magnesium. Both of them are present in body fluids. Magnesium ions are concentrated inside the animal cells, whereas calcium ions are concentrated outside the cells, somewhat similar like sodium and potassium configuration.
Talking about calcium, calcium ions are present in the external skeleton of creatures as calcium carbonate, while creatures with interior skeletons use calcium hydroxide phosphate. The enamel on teeth is fluorapatite. These ions are important in blood clotting and are also required to trigger the contraction of muscles, such as those controlling the heartbeat. A decrease in calcium ion content in blood may lead to a disease called tetany. Tetany is a disorder of involuntary contraction of muscles. And increase in the concentration of calcium ions in the blood may lead to the calcification of several internal organs. Now the question arises, what is calcification? Calcification is the accumulation of insoluble calcium salts in a body tissue, especially in bones. The absorption of dietary calcium ions from the intestinal tract may be prevented by the simultaneous ingestion of organic acid, such as oxalic acid, with which it combines to form an insoluble salt. Calcium ions are excreted mainly through the large intestine instead of the kidney.
Now, talking about magnesium. Magnesium plays important biological role. It acts as a counter ion to the negatively charged groups in the nucleotides and polynucleotides. Now, the question is, what is nucleotides? The nucleotides contains three parts. One is a nitrogenous base, as you can see in the second figure, a pentose sugar, and a phosphate group attached. The nitrogen base and sugar are joined by an glycosidic linkage, and sugar and the phosphate are bonded through phosphoester linkage. Now, one of the most important nucleotide is adenosine triphosphate, which we all must be knowing. It serves as fundamental energy source for living cells and thus known as energy rich molecules. The first figure shown here is the structure of ATP. It contains three phosphate groups and one base. Here the base is adenine and this pentose sugar. Magnesium ion forms a complex with this adenosine triphosphate molecule, somewhat as shown in this figure. It has been observed that all the transphosphorylation reactions involving ATP proceeds smoothly in the presence of magnesium ion. That is, magnesium acts as a catalyst here. So the point is, what is transphosphorylation? It is a chemical reaction in which a phosphate group or a phosphono group is transferred between a substrate and a receptor. In simple language, you can think, say, from one organic compound attached, a phosphate group is firstly attached to one organic compound and then it is attached to another organic compound in this reaction. Thus, hydrolysis of ATP to ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate, liberates about 307 kilojoule per mole of energy at pH 7, and the reaction occurs as shown, and the living system utilizes this energy to derive energy requirements for various biochemical processes occurring in our bodies. Now, magnesium also plays an important role in photosynthesis as well. Our leaves contain a special type of cell called mesophyll cells, which contains chloroplast, that is a cell organelle, and these chloroplasts further contains chlorophyll. And this chlorophyll is a magnesium complex. We all know that. And this is used to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugar and oxygen. This chloroplast also contains certain another pigment which is responsible for trapping the sun's energy which is required to carry out the process. Magnesium ion sits in the middle of the chlorophyll molecules and holds the molecule in a specific configuration. As a result, what happens that the without interfering with the reaction, the process can without interference from the metal ion, photosynthesis process can carry out very smoothly.
Now talking about phosphorus. Phosphorus is an important element for life processes. We require at least 700 milligram of phosphorus per day in our diet. We must include phosphorus-rich foods such as meat, fish, nuts, beans, etc. in our diet. Free hydrogen phosphate and dihydrogen phosphate ions are involved in the blood buffering system, that is, in maintaining the pH of blood.
Phosphate is the linking unit in the sugar esters of DNA and RNAs. DNA and RNA are again composed of polynucleotides, which we have studied earlier. The phosphate units make up part of ATP, and phosphates along with calcium works to build bones, that is the basic structure of our body. In fact, normal formation of bones depends upon the amount of phosphorus and calcium we take in our diet. Thank you. And if any queries and questions, please ask.
Thank you very much, beta, Sharmistha and Dikshika, and fabulous presentation, no doubt. जितनी मेहनत आपने की वो सारी नजर आ रही है इसके अंदर, बल्कि मैं ये तुम्हारी जो प्रेजेंटेशन है इसको क्लोज करने से पहले तुम लोगों से बात करना चाहता हूँ. आप हमारे साथ शेयर कीजिए, क्योंकि हमारे कुछ और प्रेजेंटर हैं जो आने वाले हैं, लाइन में है, जैसे मतलब नेक्स्ट वीक आ जाएंगे, कुछ इस वीक के लास्ट में आ जाएंगे. तो शायद आपसे मैं कुछ बातें करूंगा तो शायद उनसे ना कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी मोटिवेशन मिलेगा, उन्हें भी थोड़ी चीज़ों का आइडिया लगेगा. तो ये जो आपने प्रेजेंटेशन बनाई, क्या क्या दिक्कतें जनरली आती हैं या क्या चीज़ों को आप फेस करते हो, किस तरह से वो अपने प्रेजेंटेशन को थोड़ा सा बेटर बना सकते हैं, जैसे कि आप लोगों ने कोशिश की है. शर्मिष्ठा.
सर पिक्चर्स इन्वॉल्व करके और उसके थ्रू समझाएं तो शायद थोड़ा ज़्यादा समझ में आए, एनिमेशंस.
ओके, तो आपको जनरली ये प्रेजेंटेशन बनाने में कितना टाइम लगा?
सर वैसे तो हमने 4 दिन लिए इसे बनाने में.
ओके,
बट ये था कि हमने सारा दिन नहीं यूज किया.
ओके, जस्ट बीच बीच में जब जब आपको खाली टाइम मिला, आपको स्पेंड टाइम मिला, आपने उसके अकॉर्डिंग यूज किया.
यस सर.
चलिए, ओके, अगेन थैंक यू वेरी मच बेटा, बहुत बढ़िया प्रेजेंटेशन है आपकी. दीक्षिका, आप भी कुछ कहना चाहते हैं बेटा?
यस सर.
हाँ जी बेटा, बोलिए.
सर बस एक ही प्रॉब्लम आई, कंटेंट लिखने के लिए.
कंटेंट लिखने के लिए तो शॉर्ट आउट होगी आपकी, आई थिंक सो. आपने अच्छे से मैनेज किया हुआ है, और नो डाउट बेटा, देखिए जब कोशिश करते हैं तो चीजें कहीं ना कुछ रास्ता निकल के आता है. आप लोगों के एक व्यू और जानना चाहता हूँ. आपने प्रेजेंटेशन की यहाँ, कैसा लग रहा है अब ये प्रेजेंटेशन करने के बाद, कैसी फीलिंग आ रही है यहाँ पर जनरली?
कॉन्फिडेंट,
लेवल ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस आई हो रहा है. हाँ शर्मिष्ठा, आपको क्या लग रहा है?
हाँ सर, कॉन्फिडेंस तो आता ही है, अच्छा लग रहा है. बाकी सर बच्चों को कैसा लगा उससे ज़्यादा पता चलेगा ना, मतलब अगर उनको समझ आया, उनको अच्छा लगा तो सक्सेसफुल है प्रेजेंटेशन.
डेफिनेटली ये जब हम इसको डालेंगे तो डेफिनेटली उनके कुछ कमेंट्स आएंगे, वैसे भी आएंगे, पर्सनली भी आएंगे तुम्हारे पास जनरली, और नो डाउट गूगल फॉर्म जो मैं फिल करवाऊंगा उसमें भी चीजें आएंगी. बट अगेन थैंक यू वेरी मच बेटा, बहुत अच्छी प्रेजेंटेशन आपकी, बहुत मेहनत की आपने, वो सारी चीज झलक रही है. एंड अगेन थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर मोटिवेटिंग अदर स्टूडेंट्स आल्सो. ओके, थैंक यू वेरी मच बेटा.
थैंक यू सर.